right, we are back with another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great day, whatever day it is for you, and wherever you are. It is Friday on the podcast. It usually is Friday, and the past couple of ones has been on like Wednesdays and Thursdays, but we're back to our Friday cadence. So we're bringing that good Friday energy to you guys. This is going to be a good episode because we have Melissa Nash with us on the show. Melissa is from Lady Luck Investments. She went from broke to a $5 million portfolio, all while raising 4 kids. I have a 2-year-old daughter and another one on the way, and I can only imagine how hard that would be. So this should be a good story. Melissa, thanks for hopping on the show.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. As I said, I'm excited to jump into this. You got started in your 40s in real estate. You got started late. You had 4 kids. You had everything against you, but you were still able to make it happen. So I want to hear this story. Why don't you take us to the beginning and tell us how you got here?
Yeah, definitely. Well, the first thing I did is I actually took action. That's kind of a big part of it.
That's the key.
You
That's the
know,
key.
you can educate yourself and listen to podcasts and be in the forums all you want, but unless you actually take action, you're not going to do anything. And so I'm so grateful for Melissa, and this is about just under 10 years ago. I'm so grateful for myself for taking action. That very first property. And as you mentioned, I didn't know anything about real estate. I knew rich people owned real estate. My husband's grandmother had bought real estate in Los Angeles in like the 70s and 80s. And I know she passed away wealthy, although I didn't really know her and I didn't really know her story. And so I knew real estate made money. I didn't really understand how. And I also live in California, and the math just doesn't math here. It doesn't make sense. It's not landlord friendly. I learned that term, through my education. I didn't know what landlord friendly was. And so through education and research and seeking out some mentors, I kind of learned about these things. And then I got really discouraged because I was like, I don't want a full-time investing job. I don't want to be a flipper. I don't want to be a wholesaler. I don't want to do all this stuff. I don't want to fly to other states. And, I've got kids and a family, and I had a full-time job, and I was like, I guess I can't invest. It was just kind of like, I guess I'll just give up. And somebody that I had met actually introduced me to the concept of, now the term is just kind of thrown around a lot, and I've since learned that there is a big differentiation, but turnkey real estate investing, where you can buy a property in another state, somebody's already renovated it, and there's a local property manager in place. So I learned about this, and I was like, oh, this is the ticket. Like, this is how I can get started. So then it was just kind of like, okay, who do I trust? What markets do I know that make sense? Researching the property management, all of that kind of stuff. So my very, very, very first property was a turnkey property, meaning it was already renovated, with a property manager in Birmingham, Alabama. The property was a $50,000 property, definitely, C-class, Section 8 tenant. And the Section 8 tenant stayed there for 8 years. I still own the property, and it's one of my top performing properties. And, I was able to learn quickly that you can use your equity just from holding it. And so I was able to do a cash out refinance, take that money, put it into another one. And then with that property, so I've been able to just use creative strategies with HELOCs and cash out refinancing and saving, all these different things, networking, making connections. All of that is kind of what I've done to continue to build and grow.
Nice. Yeah, I like your story, especially at the beginning. You're talking about how you were kind of discouraged, growing up in California or being in California. I'm in Washington. I remember when I got started, I was, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad or something, and I was like really interested in real estate. And I started looking on market, and I realized like I needed a lot of money. I had like, this is when I was working. I was in my 20s. I had like 20,000 in my bank account, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So turning to turnkey investments, that's an interesting strategy. And it's not something I feel like a lot of people hear about or realize is an option. If you have a W-2 and you want to keep your job, you don't want real estate to be your full-time only thing you're doing, going out there, wholesaling, flipping, whatever. So you want to keep your job, and then you don't realize that turnkey is a strategy, and it's a very good strategy for those who don't want real estate to be their primary focus. So take us to that first deal. You mentioned you got it in Birmingham. Why did you decide on Birmingham, and what kind of led you to make that purchase?
It was because of connections. It
Mm.
was, I met somebody that said, "Hey, I've got a really great property management company out here, and I know somebody that can give you a property that's already been renovated." And so it was just kind of honestly blind trust and a leap of faith. Birmingham is very, very landlord friendly. It's I think it's number 2 for lowest property taxes in the country.
Oh
Over
wow.
58 Yeah, over 58% of the population rents. And so I'd done my research on the market itself, and so then it was just connecting with the right people. Like, who do I trust?
Mm.
Um, and then honestly, it was just blind faith. I've never flown out there. I mean, I've been to Alabama, but I've never seen this property to this day. I've never seen any of my properties, and I don't care to. I don't want to. I've hired really good teams, and I have very good systems to be able to buy properties out of state. I have my due diligence. I have my checklist. I have great people on the ground, and so I don't need to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned you bought this for 50,000, so I'm assuming you put something like I can't do math this early in the morning, something like $10,000 down. Did you finance this, I'm assuming, or did
Oh
you buy
yeah,
it?
finance 20% down. Yep, yep. I mean, all in, I think I was about $15,000. And, it was, yeah, nerve-wracking to take that out of your savings account and go, I guess I'm buying a property in Alabama. But you know what? But that's what you have to do is I knew I had to take action. And if I didn't do this, I was never going to do it because
Yeah.
there wasn't ever this was my learning curve. This was how I was going to learn. This was how I was going to decide if I was going to keep going. I had to take a risk and do something, and this one seemed the least risky. I mean, thank goodness, knock on wood, it's grown significantly, and I think back on it though, is it wasn't perfect. I had a squatter in the property. I've had some plumbing issues in the property, some septic stuff. It hasn't been perfect. And if I had only owned that one property and never did anything else, I would probably be freaking out a little bit, because when you have one property and every little thing that happens, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't ever want to invest again. But I continued to take action, and I continued to learn and grow and network and figure out what I wanted to do. And so when you have a large portfolio and something happens on one property, you're like, it's fine. It'll make up for it. My strategy is buy and hold. These are long-term hold properties. I'm not worried if I lose money on one property one year. I'm looking at the portfolio as a whole, and I'm looking at long term. The tenants are buying me a free house. I mean, what else? What else is better than that?
Yeah, a free house with a little bit of cash flow. It's the best way to go.
Exactly. And
Um,
tax benefits. Come on.
there you go. It's a win-win. Yeah, and so you started in Birmingham. At what point did you start? Did you keep buying in that one metro? You mentioned you started to build a team, and usually when you build a team, you keep the same property management in a metro so you can kind of get those economies of scale. Are you still buying in Birmingham today, or have you branched out?
Oh yeah, I've branched out. I branched out pretty quickly.
Mm.
I bought a few properties in Birmingham, and then I went down to Montgomery, went up to Huntsville,
All
sold a
Alabama.
couple properties. Yeah, yeah. I was kind of like Alabama. And then I figured out that, like, hey, like, some of these I actually got a decent deal on these, and they've gone up in value. And so I actually sold a couple of them. Which I'm really great. Huntsville boomed really, really, really fast, and now, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of expensive. It's hard to cash flow, so I kind of do regret selling those. But they did enable me to continue going in other markets. So I'm in about 5 other markets. I also expanded and started doing short term rentals as well.
Mm. Okay.
Short term rentals is very, very active investing. And they're a little bit more stressful. I definitely prefer my long-term rentals. Those are my absolute favorite. I don't have to think about them. I've got my property manager. They deal with the tenant. So I've kind of stopped buying short-term rentals, and I'm definitely back into the long-term rentals.
Okay. Yeah. Short term. It's kind of. I almost romanticize owning a short term. So we buy mobile home parks, RV parks, and self storage facilities. They're also very, management intensive. It's a real business that you're buying, and my wife and I have like almost pulled the trigger multiple times on short terms, just because like it just, we romanticize being able to go there every once in a while and use it ourselves, yada yada. But it is just as labor intensive, I feel like, and it's not something you should just jump into thinking it'll be pretty easy, because there's so much turnover. You have to, you have a lot of people going there consistently, and so you really need to have a plan getting into there, which is why something like long-term turnkey rentals are so attractive to investors who don't want to be in there full time, because it doesn't take as much time. It doesn't take as much of your mental bandwidth getting those up and running, and then keeping them. Um,
Exactly. I don't spend, I call it lazy investing, because I don't even spend, I mean, I couldn't even say it was 20 minutes a week on my
mm,
long-term rentals. I mean, it's
yeah,
literally like zero effort.
yeah, yeah, and it's good that way. So we've been throwing turnkey around. I want us to define that term, because not everyone understands what that means. What does it mean to you? What is a turnkey rental?
Yeah, normally when you hear a realtor will say it, and they'll say, you put the key in, you turn it, you walk in, and you can move in. That's generally the term. And so when people say that, I mean, yeah, that is the case. But to me, in the system that I have built with my company, is it's a whole process. It's the property, it's the people, and it's the process. And so I've now created an entire system that I help people with. And so number one, it's identifying the market and identifying the property. Then it's the people on the ground, who's doing the renovations, who, title, escrow, lender, property manager. It's all the people that are involved that are going to help you succeed and make it as passive and as lazy as possible. And then it's the process itself. Buying a property 2,000 miles away is pretty scary. And so you have to be able to have, the systems to, vet the people, but also, you're going to get inspections done. And, what if this happens and there's this plan? And then it's the scaling and the strategies to grow your portfolio, because I've never heard anybody say, I want to buy one property and that's it. Everybody wants to build a portfolio, especially with turnkey. You have to build your wealth and buy multiple properties, because you're holding them for long term. And yeah, you're going to get some cash flow, but it's not life changing cash flow on one property by any means. I mean, $300 to $400 is cool. It's great. That's not life-changing money. So you need to buy multiple properties. And so how do you scale? How do you grow? How do you systemize, from the LLCs to the business setup, and all that kind of stuff. So it really is, to me, what I have created is a turnkey system. It's not just the turnkey property.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned property, people, processes, and then scaling is kind of your process for building a business on turnkey rentals. Let's start with that first one, property. I mean, buying turnkey, there are specific criteria where it actually works. You cannot do that here in Seattle. It's just not possible. There aren't any deals out there that there are very few deals out there that will pencil on the long-term basis. So what is your criteria when you're buying these turnkey rentals? Where do you look? What's your, bed bath ratio, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, what's funny is I don't really look at bed bath ratio at all. And I actually don't like large properties. I like small properties. And in fact, one of my biggest tips that I'll tell you that anybody's listening is, once you've kind of narrowed down different markets that are landlord friendly, the Midwest, the South, these are kind of the go-to bread and butter markets. There's not a lot of appreciation happening. There's some growth happening, but that's what I love about them. They're just kind of set it and forget it, consistent markets, very affordable, high rental demand. Once you've kind of identified some markets, now I have teams of great property managers in some of these key markets, and property managers hold the true knowledge. You can go on, I don't know, Zillow and Neighborhood Scout, and you can like look at crime stats, and you can look up this stuff. And I don't even know where that information comes from. I don't even know how old it is. Let's get the actual facts straight from the property manager. So I've learned to really rely on trust on them. They'll tell you the numbers. One of the properties I own, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And it was because the property manager was like, actually in this area, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath rents the fastest.
Hmm.
There isn't that many of them, and there is a demand for that. So I don't necessarily believe in the whole has to be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath thing. It's some areas, there's different demand for different things, and it's all about quantity. if the market is oversaturated with 3-bedroom, 2 baths, and all of a sudden you've got the only 2-bedroom, 1 bath with the right budget, it's going to rent quick. So I don't really follow that criteria. It's more about, I definitely like cash flow. I want to make sure that I have, at least year one, I would say 9 or 10% return on my cash that my hard-earned money that I am putting down as my down payment.
Mhm.
I want at least a 9 or a 10% cash on cash return, which is absolutely possible with the interest rates today, if you know
Mm.
where to find them. And I want to see that I'm in an area that has really high rental demand, and I want a little bit of growth and appreciation. I'm not just all about the cash flow. I am my portfolio is scattered where some of my properties are really high cash flow and some have a lot more appreciation, and I think that's healthy. So it depends on where I am in my portfolio. Like, again, it's always connections and people you meet and opportunities, which is why it's so important to continue to take action, because you never know who you're going to meet. I just bought a property in Little Rock, Arkansas. I've never bought there before, and we ended up working out a deal with one of my lenders where he got really creative on the title, and the seller was willing to sell the property under market value, even though it was already renovated and it was turnkey. And so we were able to get creative with the title work. They put the title under my LLC. And then because of my creative lender, I give him all the credit. He was able to turn around and do a cash out refinance immediately. I didn't have to wait. And I think I ended up only putting I know it was under $10,000 down on a $190,000 property in Little Rock.
Wow.
Now, it's a great deal. I mean, my cash on cash return is huge on that, but my cash flow isn't that exciting. I think I make like $200 a month cash flow, but I'm
Mm.
like, I actually don't care because I only put $10,000 to buy this property.
Yeah.
So there is strategies like that I change and I pivot. But again, I'm only here and able to do this because I've been continuing to take action and learn and grow.
Yeah. On that note, turnkey properties, I mean, by definition, they're not flips. You're buying properties they're ready to rent. They're in decent condition. Are you buying flips? Are you buying, where are you getting the properties that are in the condition that you're looking for? Are they new builds? Are they flips? Or are you buying from just retail sellers that haven't put a lot of wear and tear on their property?
No, no, no. I'm actually buying them straight from the flippers, straight from the renovators.
Mm,
So,
mm,
so over the last 10 years, so when I first got started and bought that first property, I realized that there were people out there that this was their business. They were flippers. They
yeah.
they were renovating properties and selling them. And so as I was continuing to buy those, I started building out my own network. And because of course everybody's coming to me and going, Melissa, how are you doing this? How are you buying properties in Alabama and Memphis, and what are you doing? And so I was like, hey, I'm going to kind of build out my own system and my own team. So that's
Mm,
what I started doing. So now I help people be able to do it themselves. Well, I'm helping them use my connections essentially. But so I've got teams that I have personally vetted out and bought properties with in a bunch of these different markets. So Memphis, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Birmingham, and that is their sole business. They buy properties that are distressed, they flip it, they renovate it, then they give those properties to me directly. They're not on the MLS. They come to me, and then I get to share them with the people that I'm working with and go, hey, I just got this really great property. Are you interested in it? And I'm buying from the same pool. Like, I see properties come in, I was like, yes, I will take that one. Or I've got, clients that I'm working with, and they'll take it. So they are exclusive, and they are with teams that I personally vetted out because I see the inspection reports consistently. And real quick if somebody's a good flipper or a bad one when you see those inspection reports.
yeah. I mean, and again, on that note, building the team, you've mentioned it a few times, is one of the most important and also most difficult to get right steps. So what is your advice? What are the key roles that you needed to build out to build your business? And then what's your advice for somebody trying to replicate that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that you need to constantly be checking in and asking questions with whoever you're working with. So, a lender, for example, is part of your team. Your lender can be your CFO. They're the ones that are going to continue helping you. If you're working with a lender that specializes in investment properties, they're going to have different types of loans for you. They're going to be able to tell you, hey, I've got this property. Can I do a cash out refinance, or can we do a HELOC on that rental? Or, they're going to help you grow and scale. My lender actually looks at my taxes before I submit them to make sure that I'm not taking too much write-offs on the business side, because it's very tempting and I've done it.
Mhm.
He's like, no, like you can't take, you're going to enable yourself to qualify for conventional loans anyway.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
and so we want to get your write-offs on the real estate side, not on the business side. And so I really do have, since the very beginning, I've listened to my lenders and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do so that I can continue to get qualified? And then as I'm talking to my lender and I've got this great relationship with them throughout the years, I'm asking them like, hey, what are the top markets you're seeing? Where are investors buying? Who do you know? I'm constantly networking. And so I think that's the biggest thing is don't just lay there, like talk to people. And I know it's hard sometimes. I'm actually an introvert, actually. I may not sound like it sometimes, but I actually am. And I get so nervous and I get so scared to like pick up that phone and I have to like talk myself into it. But I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I gotta do this. So your team really is more than just you think of your team as just like myself or your property manager, but include your lender in there as well. um I've got some of the markets I buy in often. I've got my title company there, the escrow company there, and I use them over and over again. And I ask them advice and, hey, I'm moving this property over to an LLC. Can you do a quick claim deed for me? And, is everybody else doing that? Or what else is other people doing? I'm always just kind of like, am I alone in this or what else is going on?
Yeah. Yeah, having just having people that you can kind of act as a soundboard, especially when you're out there doing deals on your own and you don't have a team of other investors that you're working with. Talking to the people on your team, your lender, y- y- your well, I'm just gonna say lender again, your property manager, anybody that
Yep.
is that's you're working with daily, they will give you good advice on the deals that you're working on. So I like to hear that. I did take a peek at the clock, though. We have two more steps. We have the process and then the scaling that we haven't gone through, but we've already run the clock down. It's past the 20-minute mark, so we do have to push it in to the quick question round. Are you ready?
Let's go for it. Fire
All right.
away.
It starts with education. I'm going to need two recommendations for you. And this, it could be any form of education. It could be a conference you've gone to, a mentorship program you've been a part of, book you've read, movie you've seen, anything. But I need two recommendations, one for general life wisdom and then one for real estate.
Okay, well, I hate to say Rich Dad Poor Dad because everybody does and it's so cliche, but I actually anybody that's brand new and thinking about investing, if you have not read Rich Dad Poor Dad, then you are like missing something. Like you actually have to. So I'm sorry to say that. The other one is I'm very, very into Napoleon Hill,
Mm,
Think, Grow Rich. I'm very into positive mindset and I guess kind of manifestation in a way, but like all of that positive thinking, setting goals is huge. I would not be where I am today if I did not set big goals for myself because you can't hit something if you don't set those.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, uh, Rich Dad Poor Dad, a lot of people say it, but for good reason. It's a good book, at least to give you the motivation and the framework that you need. It won't tell you how to do real estate. That's not really the
Mm-mm.
goal of it. But if you want motivation to understand why it's important to get into real estate, that is the book to pick up. All right, with that, I'm going to push us on to the next question. This is for your younger self. Let's go back to the Melissa who had no experience in real estate. She was just thinking about buying that first rental out there in Birmingham, I think you said. Go to her, look her in the eye, give her one piece of advice moving forward.
Keep taking action. That's it. Keep taking action. You learn as you do.
Mm,
I could not have read or learned all the things I've learned. There's no way. I've learned by doing. So continue taking action and do not stop taking action.
yeah. Yeah, that's timeless advice. And I'm gonna put it in the same category as I wish I got started sooner because it has to do with action. So many, I'm 95, 96, 97% of the people who come on this show, that's the piece of advice that they give when I ask this question. And so whenever somebody says something like that, I always want to put it back to you, the listener. If you are out there, you haven't gotten your first deal done, go take action, get it done. It doesn't matter what it is. Could be a turnkey rental, a $50,000 property in the middle of nowhere. Just go get a deal done. Make sure it pencils, but get it done and then get that ball rolling because everybody who comes on the show wishes they got the ball rolling sooner. Because the more action you take, the more you're going to get hit in the face, but it will get that ball rolling. I said that multiple times. And 10 years down the road, you're going to be happy that you got started today. So next question, this is about the US. You have mentioned a few times that you've expanded into different markets. So why don't you take us to your favorite market today that you're most excited about investing in?
Oh, great question. Well, I'm actually pretty excited about the new property I just bought in Little Rock.
Hmm,
That's a new market for me. And I have a phenomenal team. They're great property management. The properties are pretty affordable, very landlord friendly. In fact, it's the most landlord friendly state in the country. It's still illegal. You can get thrown in jail if you do not pay your rent, according to the laws. Of course, they
wow,
don't enforce it, but
crazy.
it, I know it's kind of
I'm
crazy.
from Washington. That would never happen.
Right, yeah. So no, Little Rock is a great market for me. It's a new market for me, although it's been a great investment market for quite some time.
Huh, interesting. I only have one experience with Arkansas with that general area. I bought a self storage facility in Hot Springs, we just had so much property crime down there. It was annoying, and I don't know. I had a bad taste in my mouth. But I've heard Little Rock, the prices are really low, and so I understand. I'm sure they cash flow pretty well. Are you? Do you have you had? I mean, this is a new acquisition for you. Have you had any property crime issues or anything like that?
No, I'm also very picky about areas. I mean, this is
Mm,
a solid B class area. I own C class in other areas, and again, I think it's just a matter of making sure your property manager is a good property manager, but also vetting out those tenants, but also being aware of like what you're buying. Like my expectations are kind of low if I'm buying in a kind of a rougher area. I don't have high expectations, but I definitely prefer B class areas that have a little bit more appreciation, a little better tenant, little bit less risk.
yeah, makes sense. All right, that leads us to the next question. This is about finding deals. It all starts with getting in contact with the seller and penning that purchase agreement. So, what is your favorite way to generate new leads and find deals?
Yeah, definitely. I've already got the teams who I know do a good job. I've already vetted them out. I have my people. I'm always looking for new people. I'm always talking to people. I'm like, hey, do you know any flippers in this area? How long have they been in business? But the key is vetting them out and having long-term relationships. One of my partners in Indianapolis, I've known him for 10 years. And I've seen hundreds of inspection reports from his team. And I know his management company as well. And so again, it just comes back to me for relationship building.
Hmm,
And so I get to, at this point in my career, I get to lean on the teams that I already have.
hmm.
And then of course, if I'm looking for a new market, I'm gonna talk to my network. I'm gonna ask my people. I don't even look at the MLS. I don't even know like Zillow what. Like I don't even go there. Everything I do is off market.
Yeah. Yeah. Brokers, it actually took me a while to realize the value of brokers. And I'm in the commercial side, which is really stupid of me. But I was 100% convinced that you could only find good deals by doing off market lead gen, sending mailers, doing cold calling, texting, all that stuff. And it wasn't until recently that I realized brokers are just as good. And it's a lot more fun because you can just have a conversation and they'll bring you the deal before it hits the ML or, hits the MLS.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, building that network is definitely key. So now it's time to talk about deals that you've done. It starts with lessons learned. Not every deal we go through we get goes the way we expect it. In fact, most times something goes wrong, and that's when we get to learn a lesson. So, what was a deal that went a little bit sideways for you, and then what was the lesson you pulled from it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that very first property I bought, I had a squatter right away,
Mm,
right after I bought it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they stole like all the copper and I was just like, great, what did I do? I just bought this property 2,000 miles away. And it goes back to having a really good property manager. Honestly, that truly is key. I still have them to this day. And they were like, no worries. We got in there, we removed them. We know what to do. Again, buying in a landlord friendly state where you can remove squatters and they were like, yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. You're going to have to replace, the furnace piping or whatever it was. And they took care of it for me. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to do the bids. Again, they handled it. And then they said, we're going to, send somebody over to make sure this doesn't happen again. We notified all the neighbors to keep an eye on the property for us. Like they just went out of their
wow.
way to handle it
Yeah.
for me. And then they're like, hey, we got a new renter. So it was just kind of like, okay, I got over that storm. I got over that hump
Yeah.
and that renter stayed for 8 years. And so again, it's also being creative with your property manager. And when there is a problem, like, don't just settle for what they're saying. Be like, okay, like, think with them. Like, you have to think with them. I was like, okay, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? How can we button it down? I was kind of asking them these questions, not just letting them handle it. Because that's the other thing too, is a lot of people think, turnkey, like, I can literally just take a nap and fall asleep for 10 years. No, you have to put on your thinking cap and think and strategize with your property manager. Sometimes you might come up with an idea that they didn't think of, and they've given me brilliant ideas with buying extra insurance policies and different
Mm,
things. So really asking them the questions again, like getting into them and going like, hey, give me the secret stuff. I want to know the insider stuff. What's going on behind the scenes?
nice. Yeah, I like that. Think with them. That's a really good way to approach your property management team. And it just goes to show, I mean, that specific example that you gave, it it shows why it's so important to have and to find a good property manager. There's plenty of bad ones out there. I've been through them. There are bad property managers out there you don't want on your team. So you really have to both take your time finding a good one, and then be super appreciative when you do find that person. Treat them well. Think with them, as you said, and just make sure that they understand they're valued as a valued member of your team.
Yep. And also, last thing I'll say about that is pivot quick.
Mm,
If you're not happy with your property manager, get out of
mm,
there, find a new one. Don't wait. They're going to get worse.
yeah, yeah, we've learned that lesson too.
Yeah. I learned by
All right,
doing.
that's right. All right, now that was the lessons learned. Let's go to the highlight reel. Sometimes a deal just kind of goes the way that you hoped it would go, and you kind of sail off into the sunset. It sets itself as kind of your favorite deal in the past. So why don't you take us to your highlight reel? What is your favorite deal you've done?
I'll throw it out there as one of my short-term rentals. Actually, my very first short-term rental. It was right before COVID. I mean, the timing was good, and I had been researching this market in Utah, a little ski town, for quite some time, and we loved going there as a family. And so I kind of justified and said, hey, we're going to be able to use it whenever we want. We can go up there, enjoy family time, and then when we're not there, it's going to make money and pay for itself. It was so we bought it, and we actually ended up doing a 10% down on it because I was able to do it for a second property, not an investment property. And then we ended
Mm,
up just kind of deciding we were going to rent it out or whatever. But we didn't need to do any renovations to it at all. We replaced like the stove and the refrigerator, kind of updated it, brought in some new bedding. The bedding was atrocious. It was like grandma's house, like disgusting. We made it really nice, like a beautiful hotel, clean, crisp, replaced some of the lighting and just kind of modernized it. We honestly didn't do a lot with it. It was so booked out and I was actually using a property manager, a local property manager, because I didn't know I could do it on my own at that point.
mm,
And so we were paying them like 30%.
mm.
But it was so booked out. We couldn't even use it. Like, we were like, we can't even go. It's so booked out. And then I started looking at the numbers and I was like, wow, we're paying this property manager 30%. That's a lot. I was like, if I could figure out how to self-manage it, that
Mm.
money's in my pocket. So I started doing that. And I mean, the profit margin, I mean, it was huge. We were making like really, really good money. I mean, profiting at least $5,000 to $7,000 a month on this property that I paid like $150,000 for. Like, it was
That's
crazy. Like,
crazy.
when I say good deal, like, that's a good deal, right? And so we ended up deciding to sell it because it was in an HOA.
Mm,
And they were just giving us hell because it was so busy. Everybody in there was like, what are you guys doing? They're kind of upset with
selling
us.
drugs, man.
Yeah. So, anyways, so we ended up selling that, doing a 1031 exchange. And
Mm,
because of that, we were able to take a huge profit and then dump it into our second short-term rental, which is in Palm Springs, where I'm at right now. And that was truly my dream house, was to own a vacation rental here. So that was able to come to this one. And this one was a distressed property that needed to be renovated. And so my husband was able to hire out most of the subs and kind of do the renovations. So then because of that one, we bought this one. And because of that, in 4 months after we renovated this one, we brought up the value $700,000 on this one. So it appraised for double what we paid for it. And then I did a cost segregation on it. And this is a long story, but I ended up getting a $350,000 tax deduction on a cost segregation Because I bought that condo in Utah. So that's why it's the best deal ever.
I thought you could only do a cost seg on. I think I'm being naive here. I thought you could only do it on a commercial property, but you can do it on a residential property as well.
Absolutely, you can. I do them
Okay.
all the time. And with the big, beautiful bill that just came out, there's a lot of things in there that are good. Some things maybe not so good for other people, but that's one of the things you get 100% bonus depreciation is back. And if you have a short term rental, you can take advantage of that.
There you go. Another reason to buy real estate.
Another reason. So sorry, that was very long, but I get very excited.
It's all good. It's all good. All right, let's move it along. And this is about raising money. It is you can get to the point where you run out of your own cash very quickly in real estate. And so a lot of times especially if you're going after bigger deals, you have to raise capital. This might not apply to you, so this might be an irrelevant question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What do you do to raise capital?
I don't. I absolutely don't. I use my own property's equity.
There you
So
go.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
reusing my own money.
Nice. I love it. Well, then the Burr strategy, that's your way to raise capital. I like it.
It is, but it's not necessarily. I'm not renovating the properties myself. I'm using my own equity from just natural appreciation mostly. I mean, I have done the Burr. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have done the Burr like with this Palm Springs one. But for the most part, my turnkey ones, you do build equity in those because they are in appreciating good areas. So there is a strategy in that itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember somebody came on here and they had a quote where it was like, any deal is a good deal if you can hold on to it 10 years. And that's just pretty much true. It's not always true, but it's almost always true.
Yep. It's not timing the market, it's time in the market.
There you go. It's a good soundbite. All right, that leads us to the very last question. This is for the listeners. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. This is a two-parter. Where can they find you? And then what can they expect when they reach out?
Yeah, definitely. So go to hellomelissanash.com. And there, I've got a couple things in there. They always say, like, hey, give people like one thing. I do have two buttons you guys can click on. The first one is how to be a lazy investor. I've got a quick guide on how to get started. If you're a busy working professional and you're like, hey, I don't want to go out and do this all on my own. How do I do it the lazy, easy way? That is the guide for you. So you can grab that. And then the other one is I do book a couple of free strategy calls each week for people who are like, hey, I want to talk to you more about helping me build out the strategy. Is this a thing for me? So there is a thing up there that you can click and book a free strategy call.
Perfect. I will put that link in the show notes. So if y'all want to reach out to Melissa, all you got to do is click the little more in the description. It's going to pull down that full description, and in there you can find her links. All right, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I'll come back again sometime if you want. We have fun.
We got to finish that list that we got. We still got 2 more steps to go over. So
that's right.
With that said, thank you guys for showing up. You guys are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions at all, reach out to me, Gabe, with realestateinvestingclub.com. If you want to support the show, just leave us a review or a comment. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.